Well, here's this big old deadhead that I found. I'm gonna do a little restoration project. I think it'll be pretty fun. I haven't done one in a little while. I'll kind of just go through all the steps on how I do it. By no means am I a taxidermist or a professional, but I've done quite a few shed antlers and deadheads and stuff. I don't do nearly as many anymore. I used to patch up every little shed that I found, but this one will be pretty cool. You can kind of see what I got going on here, but this thing is super old, really chalked out and cracked. And basically what I have done so far, I'm using stuff that I just have like in the garage. I just took some 9-gauge wire, some just regular trapping wire from an old snare support that I had, and then I don't know what this deer exactly looked like. I guess I really don't care. I just want to make it look cool. I just drilled out holes for my wire, and it actually worked pretty good because this stuff bends fairly easy. And then I just tacked them together with the welder, but I probably drilled my holes out like maybe 1.5 inches deep. Just make sure you don't poke through one of your tines with your drill bit. And then I just spray painted it with some primer and used some Gorilla Glue, like some 5-minute epoxy. And now I got some this Bondo here. I used it last year. I really didn't like it very much, but I kind of want to burn some of it up, so I'll just use that to rough in my tines. It's gonna take a few like layers anyways, and then I'll probably finish up the tines with either quick wood or I might try epoxy sculpt. I haven't tried it before, but I know that's what like a lot of taxidermists and stuff use. Actually, I have an antler right here that I just did. I haven't done one in a while, but it was just chewed up on this tine, and I used quick wood, and I'll just sand it down a little bit. But quick wood is made by JB Weld, and it used to be an awesome product, but they kind of changed how they made it, I think, because it's a lot different now, and I don't really like it as much. So, but yeah, so I'll go through the whole process on how I do it. My plan is here. I just left these antlers on the skull right now, but I think I'm gonna end up cutting them off and putting them on one of those fake plastic skulls that you can buy from like Cabela's or whatever, those little fake Euro mounts. I just wanted to leave them on the skull, so I had a good reference on, making these antlers look fairly similar to each other. And then I'll probably cut those off at the end. So it should be pretty fun. We'll see how it turns out. You can see what I got so far. That's after 3 layers of that Bondo. It's pretty hard stuff to work with. I think I'm gonna go ahead and saw these antlers off the skull, and then I'll probably just hit some of these high spots with my Dremel, just sand down a few of those little high spots. And then I had a thing of quick wood at home, so I'm just gonna burn this up. I don't think that's gonna be enough to do both these antlers, but we'll see. Yeah, and I pretty much learned most of this stuff from a YouTube channel. I think it's called White Bone Creations. It's actually a really awesome channel if you're looking to do European mounts and stuff like that. I think he's out of like Arizona. But yeah, he always used like some sort of cleaning product like Windex, just to like smooth out this quick wood when you're using it. It helps a lot. So you'll see me spraying this on there all the time. So, all right, we'll get to it. Alright, so this is where we're at after the quick wood. It took 1.5 things of quick wood to get this far. I'm going to bring them inside where it's a little bit warmer and let them set overnight. They're pretty soft right now, but they're starting to look like something. I just touched up that tine a little bit, so I'll get that sanded up. And then I need to add a little bit to the top and bottom of this beam here. You can see my wire right there on that one, so you really got to be careful when you're doing your wires to begin with and make sure they're in the perfect spot. So I'll put just enough on there to cover that wire. But yeah, they're starting to look pretty decent. Alright, I got my antlers all sanded up and pretty much the way I want them to look. A few little imperfections in there, but I think that kind of makes them look more natural anyways. I mean, if you look at a shed antler, there's dings and scratches all over them. But anyways, the next step is I take this putty spackling stuff. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you pretty much get the stuff anywhere. And I'll just take a big scoop of that and work it in throughout the entire antler. And basically it's going to just fill in all the little cracks and stuff from it just baking in the sun and getting weathered. I mean, these antlers were sticking up kind of like this, so the main beams and like the bottom portions of these antlers are in pretty decent shape from just being in the grass. But then, I mean, as you go farther up these beams, they're pretty chalked out. And then like on this one here, there's just like mouse chew marks all over it, so it'll fix that. I don't like to let this stuff get just super rock hard because it's harder to sand off. And basically everything is going to come off except for all those little cracks. So, I mean, like around the bases and stuff, you want to be able to see all these little bumps and stuff. And, I mean, some bucks will just have crazy gnarly bases, and then those ones are even harder. So I'll just take like steel wool or a little brush like this and knock all that stuff off before it gets real hard. It makes it a lot tougher. So, alright, we'll do that and then go from there. Alright guys, on to the next step. So this is what my antlers look like right now. They're looking pretty good. Some real little imperfections in there. I don't know if you can see this or not, but so we're about to paint them, and that paint will hide most of that. So I'm just using a white latex base paint and So we're gonna stain them after this, and you would think that you would want to use a oil-based paint, but you don't. You want to use a latex-based paint because this paint will reject that stain, and it will give it these antlers that like real natural look, because we're gonna do a whole bunch of layers. So I'm gonna paint like probably 5 different layers on this too. This paint is just you add water to it, so it's almost like the consistency of milk, maybe just slightly thicker, if you can see that or not. But you want it to be real thin, and so when I brush this on, it's gonna dry really quick. But you definitely don't want any drip marks, so you just gotta be, you know, put a little bit of paint on and then just constantly work it towards the tips of your tines here, because if you have like a big drip mark, you will definitely see that. So I'm just gonna probably film 1 time, but I'm probably gonna do this like 5 times, 4 or 5 times. But I brought a shed antler out here, so just take an antler and look at it and see what they actually look like. There's all layers and like almost like stripes throughout an antler, and like look at all the spots that are actually like white. So basically I'm gonna take steel wool, real fine steel wool, and just knock down that stain at the end, all my different colors and layers of stain, and you'll never get it perfect, but I mean the taxidermists that do this professionally, and not a lot of taxidermists even do this, but the ones that do, I think they paint most of their antlers. But like look at all the spots that you want that white to show in those spots. So you want to, you know, multiple layers of white, so you don't, you know, buff all that white right off there. But I mean, you can see that natural, that natural antler look. There's so many spots where you're gonna want dark stain and light colors of stain, and so we'll get started here, and not too long, maybe 4 or 5 days, and then we'll start the staining process. So so I got my antlers all painted up. I probably ended up doing like 5 coats on there. I just watered my paint down a little bit more, and then every few days I put a new coat on. But I got a bunch of antlers out here so you can see the different colors that I like to use. So there's a deadhead that I did last year. I found it out in the marsh, and I can just see like a tip of this antler and a tip of this one. I pulled it out of the grass, and I was like, oh, it's a deadhead. So it was preserved pretty well. It wasn't chewed up or anything. It was just all green and mossy. So like this primary color that you see through here is early American. This stuff right here, it's real light. And then like around the bases, I like to use this gun stock. It's pretty dark. And then on this one, I added some of this. It's ebony, and I'll only use like a real little bit of it. It's like this silvery gray color that you see in there, and if you use too much, it'll make it look a little goofy, but I think this one turned out pretty good. Here's another one that I used the exact same colors on. You can see like that silvery gray color in there. Here's that antler that I used in that other video, just a fresh shed. So you can see like there's all different colors in there, a lot of reds if you have a lot of cedars in your area. So if you really wanted to go nuts with this, I suppose you could try painting, but I would just experiment with a bunch of different colors of stain until you get it the way you want it to look. Here's a big shed that I found probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and I just wanted to go like super dark with this one. Just kind of reminds me of like a big Canadian shed that you would find. It was a year old, so it wasn't cracked or anything, but it was starting to get a little chalked out. So I just used a lot of that gun stock and just kept going darker around like the bases. It's been handled by like a ton of different people and probably dropped and whatever, so you can see like there's a bunch of chips and stuff in it, but I think this one looks pretty cool. So I like to just use rags instead of a brush. I think a brush might not look as good because you might see like those brush marks maybe. So I'll start doing these. I'll probably just start with that dark gun stock around like the burr, and just kind of get like a dark start like at the base of the antlers, and then it'll probably take like a day or two to dry, like the first couple of coats you put on, and then it'll take longer and longer as you go, and it'll be like real tacky. So just let it totally dry completely before you put your next coat on. And then at the end, I'll take some real fine steel wool and kind of just barely touch these tines up towards the tip, and then your white will start to show through a little bit. It'll kind of give it that natural antler look, and then they'll be pretty shiny. So I like to just hit it with some clear coat at the end, and it will give it like that real nice matte finish. It'll make it look a lot nicer. So I'm gonna get started and hopefully wrap this project up here soon. Basically, if you use sandpaper, it's gonna be too much probably. So you just barely have to do anything, and they'll start whitening up right away. It's a lot easier to do this stuff in natural light too. You can see all the little details so much better. It doesn't take much, but it'll take a lot of that shine off them too. It makes them look a lot more natural, especially around the bases. You'll start seeing like all the white on those little bumps and stuff. All right, guys, there's the finished product. Sure looks a lot nicer when it's sprayed with that clear coat finish. But it was a fun project. So I appreciate you guys all watching. Turned out pretty good.